The biggest news story in Canada this past week has been about the new Occupy Wall Street protest, which has been reborn as an Indian uprising called Idle No More. It is the same left-wing philosophy as Occupy, the same vague and incoherent demands, although when you boil it all down, it sounds like a demand for just more free stuff. And like Occupy, Idle No More has the same low-level criminality, this time blockading trains and roads instead of city parks. And Idle No More has the same organizers and supporters as Occupy, professional protesters and big labor unions that hate Stephen Harper. And just like the Occupy Wall Street protests, the consensus media just absolutely loves it. They're not reporters, they're cheerleaders. The whole political media industrial complex, reporters, commentators, spin doctors, lobbyists, this is catnip for them. Here, take a quick look.
Chief Teresa Spence is on the 25th day of a hunger strike.
Spence wants a meeting within 72 hours.
The chief turning her back on Parliament just across the river. She's sure it turned its back on her long ago.
First Nations protesters may be greeting Prime Minister Harper at the Ford plant this morning.
Amnesty International calls on the Prime Minister to meet with the hunger striking Chief Teresa Spence.
The invitations are piling up tonight in the Prime Minister's office, and there's growing urgency for Stephen Harper to RSVP.
An urgent appeal and waiting for a response from Parliament Hill.
Idle No More kicks into high gear.
Show some decency at Christmas time. A woman is starving.
No skepticism. I mean, forget skepticism. That implies some sort of cross-examination or doubt. This isn't even basic curiosity here, like who's funding your protests, let alone how can you ask for more money given that Stephen Harper's already increased funding for reserves by billions of dollars. But of course, there is an alternative to the groupthink, to the official narrative of the ruling elites, both the guilty white liberal elite that make up the bulk of the Canadian media, as you saw, and the millionaire Indian political elites, otherwise known as the Chiefs. That alternative is called the Sun News Network, us. This channel alone in Canada has been skeptical of this new incarnation of Occupy. And this channel alone has interviewed Indians who aren't part of the propaganda effort. We actually asked for dissenting views from Indians who believe in freedom, like policy analyst Joseph Cannell or Senator Patrick Brazeau, just for a balance of point of view. I mean, the media party only quotes partisans from the Idle No More movement because the media party, well, itself is part of that movement. And so if you wanted the full story, the Sun was the only place in the country you could go this week. Now, let me ask you, did you ever hear on the CBC or the CTV or any other newspaper that Chief Teresa Spence of Attawapiskat, the hero of the Idle No More for her so-called hunger strike, did you ever hear anywhere else that she hired her boyfriend, Clayton Kennedy, to be the town's financial manager, and that his contract pays him $850 a day, plus travel, plus an office, plus a computer, plus internet, plus? I mean, did you ever hear that Chief Teresa herself billed the band's daycare center more than $8,000 a month to be their manager? Seriously, to run a daycare in a town of 300 families, $8,000 a month. Did you ever see anywhere else, in any other media, that between Chief Teresa and her boyfriend, they're pulling down more than $280,000 a year tax-free? Of course you didn't. I mean, the media party wouldn't even tell you the truth about her hunger strike. That is, by her own admission, she was eating several times a day. Fish soup, moose soup, tea, everything. She was a steady snacker. She's allegedly coming up to the 1-month mark, far longer than Mahatma Gandhi could ever do a hunger strike. And she's still as tubby as when she started. But the media party religiously parroted her line that she was on a hunger strike, nearing death. If the media party would bring themselves to ask how a person in the 4th week of a hunger strike can still weigh 200 pounds, despite that obviosity being right in front of their noses, do you think we could rely on the media party to tell us facts about Attawapiskat's finances? Like the fact that they have an $8.9 million stock portfolio, with everything from Anheuser-Busch to Google to Pepsi to Halliburton to Pfizer shares, plus plenty of government bonds, $8.9 million bucks. Attawapiskat claims they're broke, too broke to fix some leaky homes, but they won't sell a few of their multi-million-dollar stock portfolio to fix it. Now, they sold stocks for other things. Last year, $200,000 for gifts, $36,000 for a goose hunt. Did you hear those stats anywhere else? There are 3 chiefs on the payroll. There are 3 chiefs, plus 18 band counselors. Have you ever heard of that? Have you ever heard of a white town in Canada with just 1,500 people in it with 21 full-time politicians on payroll? Now, the band politicians get handed $34 million a year from Stephen Harper for a town of 300 homes, and millions more in welfare checks, too. But the biggest injection of money into the town is actually from the neighboring diamond mine. Not only do they employ 100 men from the reserve, but they hire companies on the reserve too. $51 million they spent in Attawapiskat last year. Listen to this.
Since the start of construction, some roughly 5 years ago, unless I'm mistaken, over $325 million in contracts have been awarded to Attawapiskat First Nations businesses, and that's a community of only 1,800 people on reserve. 100 of the 500 employees at the De Beers Victor mine are actually from Attawapiskat, so that's 20% of the workforce from that one community. So those are examples. I mean, in 2011 alone, more than $51 million in contracts were awarded to Attawapiskat First Nations businesses.
It's amazing. So between the $34 million from the Band Council, that's from Stephen Harper, and the $51 million that you just heard there from the diamond mine, well, that's $85 million a year in a reserve that doesn't pay any taxes. Now, there are 300 homes there, about 1,800 people, 1,500, 1,800 people. Do the math. 85 million bucks divided by 300 homes is more than $280,000 a year per family, tax-free. That's like $400,000 a year for the rest of us in Canada who do pay taxes. The federal government has dumped 90 million bucks into Attawapiskat under Stephen Harper, and the diamond mine, you just heard them, they put in 325 million bucks in the last 5 years. That's close to $500 million into a town of 300 families. Now, some have become rich high rollers, tycoons, like Chief Teresa and her boyfriend, but others are living in abject poverty, those leaky homes that are falling apart. How can this be explained? Where's all the money going? How on earth can so much money pour in, and yet half the town look like a trailer park? Well, those would be normal questions for journalists to ask of any politician in the rest of Canada. Maybe the RCMP would ask the same questions too. But this is an Indian band, remember? So normally skeptical journalists accept scandals and corruption with a smile, mainly because they don't want to be called racist for asking questions about Indian politicians, but also because they happen to like the fact that Chief Teresa is trying to embarrass Stephen Harper. But look, we've been going full tilt on this story for a week. I've taken you through a dozen pages of the Attawapiskat band's financial statements. I've shown you the proof. It's out there. It's not refutable. I mean, these aren't numbers I've cooked up myself. These aren't opinions. They are numbers published in the Attawapiskat band's own books, attawapiskat.org if you're interested. Now, this is what psychologists call cognitive dissonance. In other words, it's a crazy contradiction, something that just doesn't make sense. Something's got to break. I mean, how can someone who claims to be starving herself for a month be so fat? How can an Indian chief who pleads poverty actually be rich and run a band that's taken almost $500 million in the past 5 years? This doesn't connect. How can such wealth coexist on the same reserve as dilapidated houses? How come the supposedly independent press, the self-described newspapers of record, don't investigate this contradiction? Or how about this one? How can the local member of parliament, a New Democrat named Charlie Angus, who has been the MP for Attawapiskat for more than 8 years, how can he claim he doesn't know about these facts? Here's what I mean. Here's Sun reporter Jessica Hume asking MP Charlie Angus about what he thinks of Chief Teresa's household income. Listen.
One thing that has come up is there's kind of speculation that Teresa Spence was making $283,000 a year salary.
Is that the Toronto Sun? Oh, you must have gotten that from Ezra Levant.
Do you have any comment on that or any?
Yeah, how about that it's bullshit?
Okay.
Got it? It's BS, he says. That's the best he's got. He just denies it. Because if he were to accept the fact that Chief Teresa and her boyfriend, who run a town of 1,500 people, actually earn more money than he does as the MP for the whole region, that they're rich, that they earn more money than the Prime Minister himself does when the tax-free status is taken into account, well, Charlie Angus's world would collapse. I mean, so would the media parties. I mean, this whole world view is based on the notion that Chief Teresa is a poor woman, a victim, someone who is being taken advantage of, hard done by. But in fact, she's the rich one. And her poor band members in their leaky houses, they're the ones who've been marginalized by her. She's the money taker. She's the money spender. She's the one who approved the purchase of a $96,000 Zamboni at the height of the town's so-called crisis. Charlie Angus must call the facts about Attawapiskat BS. He's got to. Because God forbid if they were true, everything he said would be wrong. And he's the MP who has presided over this mess since 2004. Now, Angus isn't the only one who's closing his eyes tight and putting his hands over his ears and saying, "Yeah, I can't hear you, that's BS." So is the self-described greatest investigative journalist of our generation, Glenn McGregor, the brilliant mastermind behind the 100 or so stories about robocalls, you know, the fake scandalette about Stephen Harper allegedly stealing the last election using devious phone call robots. Now, last night, Glenn McGregor took a short break from his important robocalls work and briefly seemed interested in a real scandal of a chief hiring her own boyfriend for $850 a day and a reserve with a $9 million stock portfolio pleading poverty. Look at what he wrote. This is a Twitter tweet that he put up. So did Spence's spouse actually bill $850 for every working day of the year, as Sun TV suggests with this $221,000 figure? Now, as you know, I took that statement directly from Attawapiskat's own government website. Put it this way, it's on the very first page when you type the word Attawapiskat into Google. So then you take your computer mouse and you click the button and you see the contract. But let me Google that for you because it's so tough. Now, here you have it right here. There's the contract. $850 a day, 3 weeks a month. And then $100 an hour the other week a month, which is the same as $850 a day. Plus flights, plus an office, plus a computer, plus a filing cabinet, and on and on and on. It's all there. It's in the contract. It's on the website. You can Google it. But Glenn McGregor, the leading investigative reporter for the Ottawa Citizen, the newspaper of record for Parliament, well, he briefly showed a bit of an interest, not enough to actually investigate or to click on Google, but just to write a quick chitter-chatter online. But then, moments later, some anti-conservative activist named Conbegon said that an Indian TV station disputed this figure. So McGregor's moment of curiosity passed like a passing breeze. And here's what he wrote. "As I said earlier, I know zip about Native politics, so I'll defer to APTN." That's that Aboriginal TV station. "I'm shocked to hear they debunked Sun Report." Did you get that? So he will defer to the Aboriginal TV station, which has been cheerleading the Idle No More protests. But who cares who they were? I mean, Canada's greatest digger, detective, was interested in a scandal for about 5 minutes until some other journalist or activist told him, "Nah, don't bother." So he said, and I quote, "I'll defer." That's your watchdogs for you. That's your mainstream media for you. Glenn McGregor has got more important things to look into, like Bev Oda's $16 glass of orange juice. Remember her? She was fired over that. Well, today Stephen Harper did something bizarre. He caved in to the snacking chief's demand for a meeting, which they'll have next week. Now, nothing will be achieved at this meeting, of course. Of course not. Like Occupy, it has no tangible goals. More money? They're getting more money every year. That's not the solution, of course. It's the root of the problem. But Harper has continued the tradition of giving in to threats, like Brian Mulroney did at Oka, like Jean Chrétien did at Gustafson Lake. Chief Teresa didn't actually threaten any violence, to her credit, but many of her fellow protesters broke the law and blockaded roads and railways. But now the word is out. If you go on a diet for 3 weeks and have a sympathetic press corps, you can make the Prime Minister dance. As I said at the beginning of the show today, there's only one group of people you can trust to fearlessly tell you the truth and not to cave in to the millionaire politicians or their lapdog reporters. You're watching it. It's the Sun. Do you really think that Indian problems will be solved at this meeting next week? Of course not. Until the Indian Act is repealed and Indians are given property rights and democratic accountability like the rest of us, they will never be free. Chief Teresa, the Indian 1%er, the snacking hunger striker, the high-rolling chief who drives a Cadillac Escalade, she got what she wants. But we at the Sun won't rest until the downtrodden 99% of Indians get what they deserve, freedom, and a chance at prosperity like the rest of us have.